I'm Brent Leary.
Paul Greenberg.
Excuse the intrusion. Hey, it's Friday. We're talking sports. Oh, it's another Friday in the midst of 7 months sheltering in place.
You know, I could swear I said I was Paul Greenberg yesterday.
Yeah, you did. I remember.
I
I
did.
heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anymore. I think actually, I was sort of thinking about it. I probably should say it every day just to remind myself.
Well, if you must. Oh, but before we go further, talk about some stuff. I just want to say a happy anniversary to you and YG, which is Yvonne Greenberg, on anniversary number 39.
Yeah,
39 years. That's amazing.
I know. The thing that's freaky about it is there's a fair amount of people that you and I know, for example, that are considerably younger than the number of anniversaries I've had.
Well, there is that. but,
Yeah,
but that's just a
that's,
sign of that's really, I mean, it's incredible. I mean,
we're
you
going
you
strong.
absolutely what a catch for you.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Oh man. You want to talk about lucked out? First, first person I met in my let's call it my romantic life that would kick my ass.
And and because I'm afraid of that, I will make sure, Yvonne, that we will be done on time and he will not be late for dinner.
Well, actually, tonight I actually have a call after the show, so
That
and I
well,
have to
I'm
do
just
it.
saying it's not that's not my fault. It's not on my watch. So
That's right.
you go ahead and take that one in your own hands, buddy.
I'll just blame the vendor. I'll blame the vendor who's making me do the call in.
Just make sure my name is Bennett. I am not in it. So
Just think of it this way: if Yvonne actually takes umbrage about the vendor making me do that, one of the big five will no longer be in the big five when she's done.
be the final four again.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh, so let me share this again. I don't know if you see
Oh,
what Bob
thank you,
had to say.
Bob. Thank you, sir. It's the tail end of the Jewish New Year. We're heading to Yom Kippur. Uh, starting. Well, let's this tonight. It's the last part of the Jewish. I don't celebrate it, to be honest, but I'm culturally Jewish more than religiously so. But it's actually uh, we're heading to our Day of Atonement, because if I celebrated that, I'd have to turn it into a year of atonement, right? Right. So it's literally a matter of time at this point.
All righty now. So well, still have a happy one with
Thank
you
you,
know.
and thank you too, Bob.
Well, and since Bob is here with us, first of all let me get him off the screen there. Uh, I just I just saw this clip and I just had to like cue it up and play it because it's just too good. And it's all about the appearance of the person that we're about to be on here. Look at what he is wearing as he holds his press conference. So here we go. Let me do this and let me do this and make sure the sound is on.
Oh my God!
And
I
look at
think
this.
that Coach Gruden, has done an outstanding job, really,
Unbelievable.
putting this team together in a pretty short amount of time, both from a
Is that from
personnel
his commercial?
standpoint, coaching
That's his
staff,
press conference.
Unbelievable.
and
He
just the way that
He just
he's
woke
been
up.
able to get the players to do the things that I know he
literally
believes
looks
in
like he
and what
wears
he
something
wants
that
them to
was
do.
just eaten by moths.
He's rebuilt the offensive line.
It was eaten
the
by a
skilled
moth
players
like
on
5 minutes
offense,
before he went on the air.
and
Unbelievable.
That's-
running back position.
he just
so they're
and he
they're a
looks
very good running
miserable too.
game.
I mean, well,
Get
he
a high
always kind of has
percentage
that.
of
Well, you know that what is
complete
that
a high percentage of
show about the
passes.
Walking Dead?
Score a lot of
zombie?
points, control
He's
the
wearing
ball,
like
drive the ball down
a
the
zombie
field.
shirt that goes with his demeanor at that moment. Oh my God! I mean, look, I get the idea of casual, but that's like, come on, so you have here's I guess is what you have. You have business casual, and insult casual. Right? Insulting to everybody at that press conference. Well,
I
they're
mean,
not there, so I guess no one sees them.
I'm not even trying to be funny. I mean, the homeless are like, man, we could help him out. We could give him some
Yeah.
better than that.
Oh my! I've never seen. That's what. Oh my God! There's very little to say about it other than Well, no, there's actually nothing to say about it. I
Look at what
really am
Bob.
sitting here.
Look what Bob has. To say. He needs to be paid more, and then that's from being in the Pats.
Pat-
I
Yeah,
don't
but
think
the
I want to
Pat
go
ball has
there.
obviously been eaten by moths, right? Right, that's the problem. It's been eaten by moths. I mean, what he really needs is what's the wood? Cedar wood, which to chase away the moths. Right, mothballs or cedar wood, and he should swallow a couple of mothballs maybe, and that'll help him.
I mean,
I swear to God, unbelievable.
let me just see this again real quick. I'm not going to put the sound on, but let's see. I mean, damn.
Holy cow!
That's pretty rough, man. That's almost makes me feel sorry for him, but not quite.
Nah,
So,
nah.
all right.
Don't.
I just
Do
just
not.
had to show that, man. That was
Do
just
not.
woo.
Wow. Hey,
All
Rickard,
righty. Hey, have you been watching the NBA playoffs at all?
No, I've been tracking them. I haven't been watching them much. Weirdly, I'm still sticking with some baseball, even though I don't know why. I can't give it up, I guess.
Well, your Yankees are going to be in the playoffs, so.
Yeah, well, they let's put it this way. They won.
Oh, wait a minute.
They,
I got to put you on here. It's just me. I mean, geez, nobody wants to see that.
they had their losing streak, then they had their 10-game winning streak, and now they're back to losing again. So they're ending the season with a whimper, not a bang, right? So they have 3 games against the Marlins, and that's the end of that.
Well, they're preserving themselves. That's all
Yeah,
for the playoffs.
Yeah, they're just playing crappy baseball. Even though I will say today.
Oh, nice.
Now notice the year
2020.
It's a new one.
That's nice.
Yeah,
that's very nice.
I still have faith.
Well, you got to have faith, a faith. Anyway,
that's right. So so to that end, I've been keeping tabs on the playoffs and the Nuggets and the whole thing.
Well, here's the thing. Look, there's a pretty good possibility that we're going to get Lakers Heat and LeBron going, well, not going back to his old stubby yards, but he'll be playing against his old team. Remember when he was with the big three? They called himself the Heatles.
Yeah.
And now he's he could potentially be going up against them in the finals. That's kind of interesting.
Well, at least there's some drama there.
Well, and I think a lot of people may think, oh, well, if LeBron plays them, it's in the bag. I don't think so. The Heat are looking pretty good, actually. I would not be surprised if they beat them.
Here's the thing. People who say that are ridiculous. I'll tell you why. The Heat made the finals. Okay. Right. If they're going to be in the finals, then they're not easy to beat. They made it all the way there. Right. So, any team that gets that far, you can never count out. Never. No.
And they're playing. I mean, it's like you could catch, you get on a nice streak. You could just be so hot that you could even beat the better team because you're just in that zone. I could definitely.
I mean, I will be. If I'm, I don't know. There's nobody I love on either team. Like love, nobody I go. I mean, so if I'm going to pick a team, well, I'm not really. I'm just going to watch it for the sheer basketball of it. I will watch it because I do want to see the finals, but it'll be for the sheer quality of basketball played.
Basically, but I will say I have been amazed right from the beginning of how they've made it a pretty good experience watching this, even though we know there's nobody in the stands. But
I know
from a TV perspective, it doesn't feel like you're missing a whole lot.
Well, I mean, the virtual crowds, and then there's the shots on the court, and because it was funny in retrospect, if you think about every sport. I mean, baseball and football weirdly have it a little tougher because they're open air stadiums or big. They're not arenas, they're stadiums, right? But and baseball particularly always had it that even harder because it's really the crowd's part of the game.
Right.
But even as poorly as baseball's handled a lot of this, and as stupid as the cutouts look in the, except for an occasional funny one, look in the stands, you still at this point you're watching what you almost always watch routinely: baseball, football, and basketball, which is court, some field level view of the game, and hockey too. Some field level view of the game, which is what you're used to watching anyway. So
Right.
it doesn't feel like, oh wow, that's weird. I mean, occasionally you see weird things like, if you remember week one of the of football, the opening game, Andy Reid's shield, like that was
He needed a wiper for
wow.
that thing.
I know, or a welding torch so he could go do something to look like he should wear that.
But you
Right.
know what? Even Andy's even his screen wasn't as bad as this.
Nothing will ever be as bad as that.
Oh my
Gypsy
god.
moths, eaten by gypsy moths. Bill Parcells, Bill Parcells.
I'm
Bill
surprised
Belichick's been-
I'm surprised his wife even let him walk out looking like that, to be quite honest with you.
He probably snuck away. There's no way she would have done that. I that's sort of a weird. I mean, it's so weird. How do you? I mean, how do you walk it? Look, I know there's no actual reporters there, right? It's all being. This is what all the press conferences are doing. They all
Right.
have it broadcast in. Remember, when we had Thomas from the Norwegian.
Oh, right,
football
right.
on, they had the little robots.
Right, right.
But which were adorable, really. They were actually really pretty cool. But most of these guys are just piping in, over Zoom or something. They're piping in the thing, and Aaron Boone or Bill Belichick, whoever, is watching a screen with them on it. I assume, but you got to have some respect for the people you're talking to, or yourself at least.
Right.
I mean, Jesus. I mean, look, I love wearing casual. I don't like suits. If I can avoid a suit the rest of my life and never wear a tie again, I will be thrilled to death. If I can wear jeans and t-shirts the rest of my life, I'll be thrilled to death. But
Right.
I'm not going to wear literally a worm-eaten one, right? A worm-eaten t-shirt, right? I mean, that literally looked like a bunch of moths said, "Hey, worms, let's fight for see who can eat the most of this t-shirt up." And I say the moths got our right and the worm got the left. Oh, that's not even a worm. That looks like a snake that ate that one, right? Because it's just one giant hole. I don't know,
I'm sorry. That just struck me so funny when I saw that. It's just he's gotten to the point where he doesn't care because he really doesn't have to care because he's Bill Belichick. He's won everything you can win,
He didn't wake up on the wrong side of the bed. I think he woke up hanging from a nail on the bed. Right? The guy had like nails sticking through. Oh, my shirt's ruined. I gotta go though.
Nobody, no, who cares? Nobody. We're on the Cincinnati, so we're
Yeah.
we should get Bob to see if he can give us his best Bill Belichick impersonation or something. And you have to be dressed for the part too.
That's right, Bob. Next happy hour, your job is to dress for Halloween as Bill Belichick
with all the holes in the
Right.
the hoodie. You got to have the arms cut off of the hoodie. You got to have the hoodie with the arms cut off, and you have to have the moth holes and what do you call them? The
wormholes. No, the moth and worm eaten holes.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. That is one hell of a look.
Yeah,
Woo.
no way. Probably end up a fashion. They'll spangle it.
Oh man, I'm sorry. That just threw me all off when I saw that clip of that. And it's not just all right. I got to do it again. I'm sorry. It's not just the wardrobe. It's the kind of the disheveled look.
Right, the whole face.
And the face is morose. His hair is disheveled. Moth eaten out of his shoulder. I mean,
He's not doing a great job of promoting Dunkin' or Zooty apps either.
I'm expecting, yeah. If I was a sponsor, I'd be like, can we at least please get him a hoodie that doesn't have the holes in it? I mean,
Or, or at least Photoshop in some filler. Right.
I could imagine like a bottle of scotch on the side here or something.
I know. He looks so well. He looks so tired too.
He does. He looks kind of sad. I mean, you got to give him a break. I mean, it's been a tough year. It's only week 3 coming up, but it's
what are they? This is 2-0, aren't they?
No, they're 1-1. But this is this is what happens when Tom Brady left them. I mean, he hit the skids, man. I mean, it's
that's right.
Kind of brutal.
My baby left home. Well, he's an empty nester now. He's an empty nester.
Oh, look at there we go. We got some Russell, good old Russell. Those partners got a ton of extra TV time from people. That's a good one. That is a good one.
Coming from an executive of the New York Giants.
That's right. No, Bob, you do have to wear the clothing. You got to find.
Go make a hoodie. You know what? Get the hoodie. No, I'll tell you what. The good substitute. If you can get that suit that he ripped the shoulders off of that guy on the commercial, right? That would count too.
Yeah, or just buy an old used hoodie and then leave it outside for a couple of days in the grass. The moths, the worms, they'll all get to it.
Don't worry.
And soon you'll be looking just as clean as this guy. There it is. There it is, Bob. We want to see you looking just like this the next time we see you. All right. We spent a lot of time on that. We do have a guest in the audience there, or well, actually in the green room. Let me just before we bring it out, let's get another good one from Russell and popular Halloween costume. Yeah, that we shall see about that. All right, I'm going to allow PG to introduce our guest.
Well, no, actually, I want you to introduce yourself from your history, kind of. Look, so Steve and I, we bonded like within 10 seconds partly because I understood what he was talking about when he was talking about gaming, because we were talking about video games, and this is like an industry veteran in that domain. Steve is like he's an innovator, actually an innovator in that field, and he's built this interactive engagement platform that is built on those principles, which is of course why Lithium became well known, because their interface was gaming. And Steve's actually the first guy I know who's actually built a full-blown engagement platform on gaming, with gaming principles in mind throughout. Not gamification, gaming. Okay, I'm distinguishing. Gamification occurs, of course, but gaming. And he's managed to penetrate multiple industries, including sports, which is one of the reasons we have him here. But Steve, why don't you talk a little bit about just the actual history you have? It's like a history of the video game industry in one head, right? So,
right. Well, thanks for that intro. Can you tell I'm blushing? I'm so flattered.
No, you have soft lighting on, so we can't.
Oh, do I? All right. But then I know you say
your lighting's good.
You say that kind of stuff to all the boys, so I'm going to just take it for what it is. Although I do feel a little self-conscious after seeing that Bill Belichick clip.
Wait a minute. Well, before you get going, so could you see yourself rocking that look walking down the street?
There's got to be an empty bottle of whiskey just off camera. there has to be.
Maybe that's actually, it's, you know what? That explains it. It was so high proof that it literally melted holes into his shirt.
Through it. It's like bleach.
That's right. It melted holes into his shirt.
He must have gotten into my dad's homemade wine. But yeah, I felt like changing my shirt, although I think I'm all right. I think I'm up to your high standards, your impossibly high standards.
Yeah.
I didn't know you guys were so judgy.
We are, man. T-shirts without holes are almost imperative for us.
Yeah, when it comes,
that's our fashion statement.
And when it comes to the Patriots, yeah, we can be a little tough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
By the
yeah.
way, who's your favorite football team?
Oh, okay. So I grew up in Windsor, Ontario, which is across the bridge from Detroit, Michigan, which should have made me a Lions fan. But for some reason, I think going back to when I was just a little kid in the Dan Marino days, for some reason the Dolphins, they never win. But I don't know, for some reason I'm always pulling for them. And now I'm in Vancouver, so I should be liking the Seahawks. I got nothing against them, but
Well,
yeah.
I do.
I'll spread my loyalties around. Let's put it that way.
Hey, as long as you don't spread those loyalties to the Patriots, you're fine with us, man.
No,
You're
no,
okay.
they're
Red Sox if you want to be, but not the Patriots.
Well, unless you rock this, you know,
Then you can
You're a Patriots fan if you rock that. All right.
that is nasty. Like, doesn't he have any friends in the locker room that would have pulled him back? Seriously, did they just push him out? Maybe he got locked out. How else can you explain that?
His wife locked him out.
There's got to be.
don't know.
I think he's just doing us.
Non-comprehend-
He's just doing us to prank everybody because he knew if he came out looking like that, all we'd be talking about was that, not any football, because they did lose that last game. So,
But there has to be at least one mirror in that stadium.
this whole show is going to have a common theme. I can see.
Sounds like it. So really, run through your history, because it's fascinating to me, and I think anybody who's ever played a video game, and then we'll get into the actual, the platform and stuff. But your history
Sure.
is like, I'm really cool.
Yeah, and let's start with that, because when you talk about video games, I think everyone can agree that they're the gold standard of engagement. Like, everybody talks about engagement, but there isn't any other industry where the product that you're actually selling is engagement. And what you're doing is you're convincing somebody that the threat of boredom is worth them spending money to alleviate, right? So I was in an industry where we would build interactive experiences that were so engaging that people would give us money to make that problem go away, the problem of boredom. And going back, 20 some odd years now, I was a producer and a gameplay designer on big budget blockbuster games, games for Disney, Electronic Arts, Vivendi, Ubisoft, Sega. So games like NHL Hits. I worked as the associate producer on Simpsons Hit and Run. I did the first 3 CSI crime scene investigation games. So I was the lead designer and the producer in combination of roles on all 3 of those titles. So within those 3 games, there were like 15 or so cases or stories, and I wrote half of them. We worked with the voice actors. So anyway, that was the old part of my life. I started some gaming companies, including a local mobile gaming company here called Hothead Games. Big success, lots of hit titles. And then I actually started Pug, my current company, as a game company. So there was this game that I had in mind to build for a variety of reasons. We turned the corner on that one about 10 or so some odd years ago. And that was when gamification was starting to become a buzzword. So what I recognized in the landscape of marketing and customer experience was that people weren't doing it right. So what they thought was gamification was really just trickery. Like, it was taking extrinsic motivators, dangling them in front of people and saying, hey, if you do this, I'll give you this. Now, if we ever tried to do that as game designers, if we just tried to give somebody a badge or some kind of recognition, and if that was the game, you'd get beaten with a sack of joysticks. Like, that just doesn't fly, right? Like, that's not how you do it. There's stuff way beneath that surface and much more core, intrinsically motivating that people need to be tapping into. Now, I'm not talking about making video games for businesses. I'm talking about pulling out the principles of gameplay design, the things that are intrinsically motivating, the psychological motivators that get you inspired to deepen your involvement or experience. And we really set off from there. So we said, we're going to bring this to the world of business to solve challenging business problems like customer experience, employee loyalty, fan engagement. So there's a pretty wide spectrum to it, but that's kind of going back 20 years to where we are today, and we have a platform that we've been just maturing and refining and perfecting. That's now available as essentially an enterprise solution. So.
Oh,
So
he's putting it up there.
yeah,
Okay.
this is just a quick look at some of the things they do, even though it's blocked by my name somewhat. But thank you. But so the thing that's fascinating to me, I think that blew me away with what you were telling me is, so several years ago, Michael Wu, who at the time was chief scientist of Lithium, now is the chief AI strategy at Pros. He's also a thought leader in both influence, and he looks at gamification. And he literally went to your point of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, right? And of course said, look, extrinsic motivation is where a lot of people start, but that's not what fundamentally drives loyalty, commitment, advocacy at all, right? What's doing it is always intrinsic. And you're the first person I've met since Michael, literally, who actually understood that principle. But what made what you're doing even more interesting to me was that you built it into a platform, which that's really hard, because by nature, the technology, because it's a enabler, is almost 98% going to be extrinsic in what it does, right? So can you explain how do you frame that, how you think about that? Because, and then, it is a sports show, so you can talk to some of the sports stuff, but explain that first, because to me, you're unique that way, and thus important to the next phase of engagement.
Yeah, and that's really a great way of putting it, because what we saw early on and what made me kind of frustrated and recognize that there was an opportunity is a lot of technologies being rushed to market that were very simple, just badge points and leaderboard solutions. There's not a lot of heavy lifting that's going on behind the scenes when you see a system like that. But where it becomes really difficult and challenging is where you're looking for a breadth of experience, where you're looking for customizability and the ability to create experiences that are more deeply motivating than just like shining a bright light in somebody's eyes and saying, hey, if you do this, I'm going to give you this badge or this reward. So that's where the real challenge, the difficulty, the complexity, and the cost and the technical risks came out early on. Was how do we create a toolkit that somebody like me and some of our designers can use to approach a business challenge, a business problem, and say, how do we assemble this? So we don't have a cookie cutter, one size fits all solution. It's impossible to do in a way that I would be happy with, because everybody has different challenges and different problems and different reasons for even wanting to motivate their community. So it is one of the frustrations. It's one of the limitations that we get businesses coming in saying, can you show us a demo? I can show you a dozen demos, but I need to know what it is that you're wanting to accomplish, and I can pull out the ones that make the most sense to you. So it's a little bit frustrating that way, but ultimately when we are able to show something that provides a solution that really hits those knockout punches of what they're trying to achieve, it feels like magic to them, because what they aren't able to do is that thing that I said earlier, which is create so much motivation. Again, like, think about it. In my world, I was able to design things that people gave us money to feel engaged from. And most marketers right now are thinking about ways to bribe their customers to do what they want them to do. That's a game-changing way of looking at it.
Yeah. So how'd you get involved with the sports side of it? I mean, you can see some of the obvious connections, but how did you actually literally get involved with it? What trigger? How'd you find the teams or the leagues, or how'd you think about it then once you found them, and what'd you do?
Yeah, well, I love sports, so we'll start with that. And when you're sitting as a fan, here's the thing though, just to rewind, I've never professed, or I would never even dream of saying, hey, you know what, like, you should use our platform during the game to do all of these more engaging things. I mean, yes, we can do that. There's a capability within the platform to do that. But my view is, if you're having trouble getting bums in the seats, our software is not going to fix that problem. You got bigger problems than, like, why don't you fix the team on the ice or on the field, right? Like, I cannot make that problem go away. We can certainly, enhance that, but where I prefer to look is outside of the game, right? So in the days leading up to the game, how are we building anticipation and enthusiasm and getting people to feel like their excitement is being, ratcheted up as the game day is approaching? In particular, what I've enjoyed doing when we've worked with the small number of teams that we have is finding gaps in their engagement calendar and filling those gaps. So for example, when we worked with one of the hockey teams here, we realized that they never did anything promotionally on Tuesdays for some reason. They always had something scheduled on other days, but they didn't have them on Tuesdays. So that to me is a lost opportunity. Like, why don't we create a digital something, little activity that, in addition to on the other days, in particular, we turn up the heat on it on Tuesdays. So we're able to level out the engagement, which to them was really exciting. And then there's the part that I think for some reason, I think across all industries, people don't really look at that carefully. It's what happens after the customer or fan has done what we've wanted them to do, transact, come to the game, do whatever. There's this, to me, shocking disrespect that happens at the point where you finally got from the customer what you wanted them to do, and then you kind of ignore them. Well, that to me, like, that's when you should be thanking them and, encouraging them to somehow share about the experience. Like, that's not when you leave them alone. So when I talk about our view of it, yes, we can do stuff during the game, absolutely. I prefer to look outside of that and say, in the lead up to it, what are we doing? And in the wind down from them actually transacting on it, how are you recognizing and appreciating what they've done? And if you do those two things well, it actually creates a self-reinforcing loop. Like, you can turn down your marketing effort because you're now retaining and turning your fans or customers into advocates who are then going to go do the marketing for you. So that's what we're trying to really push as a almost philosophy, that if you do engagement right, you can turn down the marketing and let the engagement act on behalf of your marketing. And what we've seen, if you look around in the world, there's no shortage of companies that are actually doing this properly. So the companies that are doing the best job around engagement are at the tops of their categories right now. And they have as their strategic pillars, you look at almost every one of them that I can think of, like Starbucks and Hyatt and KPMG and Nike, Sephora, Disney. All of these companies are in the tops of their categories. If you look at their strategic plans, engagement is one of the top. Well, Dallas Cowboys, okay, San Jose Sharks. All of these teams have engagement as a top priority, and that allows them to focus on that, and it allows marketing to become less crucial.
So we won't hold it against you that you use the Dallas Cowboys as an example, because I hate them still to this day. But besides that, are you focused in any particular sport? I know you mentioned hockey. Are you focused there for a reason, or are you kind of working your way around the sports scene?
We've only done a couple of hockey teams, but there's really there's differences between sports only in the way we would execute and present the solution. But this, the philosophy underneath it, it really comes down to this. It's asking the question, do your fans enjoy things being more interactive and more playful? And the answer is always going to be yes. There isn't anybody that's going to tell you, oh, I wish this was more boring. And everybody likes to play. Even my grandmother used to play solitaire on her Windows computer. So you can't tell me that there isn't a way to tap into that in everybody. The real question is, what is your business needs? And even within, so we did a couple of hockey teams. They had two very different business outcomes that they were looking to achieve. One of them was trying to engage their female audience and also bring their fans more online. Another one was trying to sell more season ticket sales. So it was a similar design model, but there were very different elements within how we configured the platform to make sure that we were hitting their KPIs. And in both cases we did. So in the first case, we hit a female participation rate of 55% for a hockey team, which is crazy. And in the second example, they wanted to drive season ticket sales. So what we did was we ended up giving them a database that essentially created this customer pyramid where they could see their best fans at the top, the ones that were doing everything. But more importantly, the tier below, there was a segment within that tier of fans who were following them on social media. They were interacting with the sponsors. And I'm trying to remember what all of the criteria were, but the one that was the gap was that they were coming to only a small number of games. So we know they're big fans. We know they're near enough to the stadium or the arena that they can get to games, but they're only coming to 2 or 3 a year. That's the people that you give to the sales ticketing office, and you say, get these people on the phone and offer them a 2-for-1 or bring a friend. Like, just let's move their behavior a little bit in the direction that you want them to go. But it all comes from the data that we collected around all of these engagement actions that they can perform, and then the segmentation, and then you basically deliver that segment to the appropriate department for them to do something with.
Wow. So, all right, so you're dealing with, let's call it pre and post, but there's also is during regardless. And ultimately, pre goes through during to post, right? It doesn't just wait, it doesn't jump over it. So how do you tie in that way? Because ultimately you're going to, in that case, you're also dealing with, given your own platform, you're dealing with other vendors too on the technology side.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a good question. And so, Paul, I know you're a gamer because we talked about that before, but Brent, are you at all a gamer or a lapsed gamer?
I'm a DJer. I do live stream DJing. That's my game, I guess.
Okay, so you don't play games. You don't have a game. You don't have a rig like Paul does that surrounds you with.
Oh heck no! My last real foray into gaming was Space Invaders. What is that?
Well, it puts you back into puts me into a nostalgic frame of mind. I'll tell you that. Okay,
I was way too old for Space Invaders.
So there's a concept in gaming, and Brett, you're probably even familiar with this too, even though you're not a heavy gamer, but just this idea of questing. So when you enter an experience, you're basically told what to do, but usually in an optional way, that there are choices that you have, and those choices create an elevated sense of engagement. So that's one of the things that we pulled out of game design, and we make that an intrinsic part of our experiences. So we segment the community so that we know who you are, and then we put in front of you the likely quests that make the most sense for the kind of experience that we believe you're looking to have, and coincidentally, one that we're trying to drive a business outcome from. So there's some intelligence that goes on behind the scenes for the way we do that, and those challenges typically involve you becoming a better fan or a better customer or a better employee. And we have an enterprise integration system that allows us to connect to CRMs, to loyalty programs, to data warehouses, to marketing campaigns and programs. We suck all of that in. We find the different segments. We give those segments the best quests to do. And then they basically have a roadmap of how they become better participants. One of the things included, I'm kind of getting to your question in a way, Paul, is we have the idea of code words. So you can enter code words. That's one of the ways you can participate. You can also, make purchases. You can like things on Facebook or Twitter, or respond to calls to action. So all of these are inputs into the system. But the code word's a good example where somebody can be sent a code word from an email mailing distribution list, or see it on Twitter, or have a PIN code printed on a sponsor's merchandise. And you enter that in, that fulfills part of the quest. Maybe while you're at the game, they put a code word up on the screen. With the hockey games, that was a very cool case study, because one of the teams, there was a gal that actually walked around with an iPad during the games, and she was interacting with her sponsors, and she knew what was going on with the game. She could actually enter code words into our system that would become active during the game, and it would allow the fans to respond to something almost in real time. So they'd publicize a code word because one of the players got a hat trick, and you'd enter that player's name, and they got some bonus chance to play within the experience. So we use that in the post after. So that was just one mechanic that I'm pulling out and showing you how we can thread it through the entire range of the experience, and even use things like that. On Tuesdays, you're going to get a special code word that gives you, 20 extra points or chances to play. Now, I'm giving a very specific mechanic, but we have a variety of mechanics like that, like code words and collectibles and things, but they all kind of filter into the questing mechanism. That's how we drive people forward. And then there's this like sort of other phase to it where this gamified experience allows us to create things like, virtual collectible cards and ways that you can organize the things that sort of drive your fanaticism around the teams in ways that are expressive and reflect how big of a fan you are, and even share that with other fans. There's a social dimension to it, social challenges, collaborative challenges, competitive challenges. It's a pretty broad canvas.
How I was just gonna ask, it seems like there's so many things that these folks could do. The kind of like as long as they have the ideas, as long as they have like this open mind, there are a lot of things that they could be trying out now. Has the pandemic increased their likability to try to experiment? And do you think that if that is the case, once things kind of get back to normal, do you feel like they will still be in that exploration phase, or do you think that they are doing things now because they have to do things now, but if things get back to normal, that stuff goes away?
Yeah, it was funny because I was listening to you guys talking earlier today about the screen. So one of my friends here in Vancouver, he owns the company that put all of the screens in the WWE. I'm trying to remember what they call it, like the Thunderdome or something like that.
Oh, nice.
Have you guys seen that? It's got all of the fans around the ring, and they're there in real time.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm actually a big follower of WWE going back to I was at WrestleMania 3 at the Pontiac Silverdome.
Who is the showcase there?
The big one that was Hulk Hogan against Andre the Giant.
Whoa!
Yeah, where when Hulk body slammed Andre, I was on the 50-yard line.
Him up? Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he scooped him up. I was on the 50-yard line, about 20 rows up when that happened.
You are our second guest that has sparked my thoughts of, wow, how do I miss the old days when it was the WWF? Remember, it was the WWF.
Yeah, so those were the days, and that again, that takes me back to Space Invaders. So here we are once again. So yeah, what's happened now, obviously, is for the first time, really every company and team around the world has been slapped in the face with the cold water realization that, hey, you know what? Customer engagement actually matters. And it's never been more clear than when you're torn apart from your fans or customers forcibly, where you're not allowed to interact with them. So what's happening, obviously, is there's an awakening. Never before in the history of our company has our marketing message been accelerated so quickly. Because we've been doing this for 10 years. So think about that. 10 years ago, Pinterest was just hitting the scene. Well, 12 years ago, Pinterest was just hitting the scene. So that's when we were in business. And we were up, there was a slippery slope, like trying to explain to people what we were even trying to do. And even 6 months ago, it wasn't that easy. But the pandemic hit, and suddenly everybody knows what we're talking about. So it has been the great accelerator in the recognition or the acknowledgement, I guess, of what our purpose is as a company.
So, okay, now you have to explain something that only older gamers will probably understand what I'm going to say, but after you explain it, it'll all be clear. So explain the difference between the classic SNES and your SNES.
Okay. Yeah, I wish we could. I wish we could throw this out to the audience because I'd love to see how many of them know what the original SNES.
Take my word for it. Then none of them are old enough to know.
So the classic SNES is the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was the system after the original NES,
That's right.
but before the GameCube, I guess. What was after the NES?
GameCube was after. Yeah,
must have been the GameCube. There wasn't anything in between. So that was a game console. But as a tribute to that, when I was looking at engagement and realizing that nobody had come up with anything that I have seen, any kind of a verifiable objective measurement to measuring engagement. So, by the way, I am to this day, I think, I'd love to have anyone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm the only CEO of a gamification-based company that has any meaningful experience in the video game industry, like having worked on AAA games. So just in the mindset of, how do you quantify engagement and how do you create a metric around it, I came up with something that I call SNES, which is Steve's Net Engagement Score. And again, a bit of a tribute, bit of a throwback, a little wink, inside joke to anybody that that goes back that far. The principle of it is pretty simple. Most people measure engagement by clicks. So you click, you click, you click. That to me is not an engagement because the intent behind it can be as simple as it's just a UI interface that's holding me back from the main thing that I'm trying to get to, or it could be something very, very, very important. Or it could be the other extreme of a clickbait site where all they do is keep putting clicks in front of you in a way that's meant to frustrate you to the point of you abandoning it. Like the point is actually to disengage you, to take you as far along as possible to disengagement. And then as soon as you get kicked to the curb, they're happy because they know you are at your limit of frustration. So we're trying to not do that. We're trying to do something different. And I said, well, how can we measure that? So we actually put raw clicks as the denominator if anybody wants to follow along with the math. So any interaction is the denominator, and that's going to be the scaling factor on this. But what we're doing on the numerator is the important thing. It's the it's kind of the meat and potatoes here, that to create a sense of elevated engagement requires 3 elements. It's very simple. So one is you give somebody an interesting choice. So I put 2 choices in front of you. It could be that you've sat down at a nice restaurant and I give you the menu. And now you're going through it and there's interesting choices. So now your engagement is more heightened than if they were just clicks that I had to do for the sake of clicking. The next thing is giving those choices consequence. Now, if you're sitting at a restaurant, the consequence is medium to light, I'd say. It'll affect maybe the next 45 minutes of your enjoyment if you pick the wrong meal. On the other hand, if I told you that you've reached a fork in a road and one leads to paradise and the other one leads to instant death, suddenly the consequence of your choice is going to heighten your sense of engagement. And there's a third element. Paul already knows the answer to this, but Brett, do you have any idea what the third piece might be?
Not at all.
None. It's time pressure, or just time.
Right.
So when you're in that circumstance, if you're standing at that fork in the road and I tell you, you also only have 5 minutes to make this decision, or 5 seconds to make this decision even, now your engagement is as high as it could possibly be. It's a life or death decision. So this is all in the numerator. I haven't seen anything that, I've seen only corroborating evidence for this, even in our own projects. And I've never seen anything published anywhere that refutes anything that I've said, that you only need those 3 things. Even in a video game, we can measure this, because if you're playing Call of Duty or an F1 racing game or NHL 2000, whatever it's at, you're making probably hundreds of decisions that have consequence at least within that virtual world. And it's all time pressure because people are coming at you. So you're focused, you're deeply engaged, and you're so engaged that you're going to give me your $60 to play this game once a year. So that's how compelling this is. And then the denominator, like I said, just the number of raw interactions is what kind of scales that down. And the really fat denominator is a clickbait site. So you make one choice on a clickbait site. I do want to know where the cast of Gilligan's Island is today. And I do want to see number 6 because it's going to blow my mind. So But then they pump up the denominator. I made one choice, but they pump up the denominator. So my SNES number goes way down. In fact, it gets below 1. Once you're below 1, you're in the danger. Like you're being scammed by clickbaiters. On the way other extreme is huge numerators with small denominators. That puts you in the hundreds or even thousands on our scale. That makes you a video game. If you're that high on the scale, you are selling engagement. You're in a different industry than you're in sports fan engagement. Or we don't want you to be there. That's too far. We need to pull it back to the point where the engagement can coexist with your business goals. If we can find a peaceful combination of those two, then we find the right level. We turn up the engagement to just the right level. You're maximizing fan or customer engagement, and you're also driving business outcomes. You go too far, you're in a different business. You go too far in the other direction, you're clickbait.
Okay, so here's another thing from that. So now you see this whole in sports, sort of, although it's being classified as one, you're seeing the rise of course, esports. And that essentially is video games being played, and lots and lots and lots of people watching it and buying stuff related to it and worshiping Ninja, right? And, and doing and spending millions on building out teams and endorsements. And it's becoming it's still not, look, by comparison to, let's say, either the video gaming industry or all of sports combined, it's still, as much as people are talking about how big it's getting, it's still just a fragment of the size of the rest of them. But the potential for it, of course, is enormous. And it's why, Amazon did what it did with Twitch and so on and so forth. So how do you see Pug Interactive involved there? Because that's a very specific model, and it's kind of it's a little weird given what you just said about SNES. Is if you dial it to the extreme, you're a video game and you don't want to be there. But in their case, they kind of do and they kind of don't, right? So because they are actually literally playing video games, right? So the question is, that's not being a video game, but that's playing one. And so it's just got a very potentially potentially very lucrative, but generally very odd kind of, the engagement's different than other engagement that exists now. How do you see that?
Yeah, so there's still two pieces to it, because there are the performers, the players themselves, and then there's the fans.
Right.
I'm still trying to not make sense of all of this, but try to understand where this is going to land. And the reason I'm a little bit reluctant is because it is new. And when you look at the audiences in those esports arenas and online, it's a bunch of kids. Okay, right. So this is really resonating with them right now. It's important to them because the current generation of kids, unlike Paul, you and I, and even going back to Brent with the Space Invaders, when gaming first evolved, it evolved typically as a solitary single player experience. Only in the last maybe 5 to 6 years has it become so social. Like there's always been multiplayer, even Space Invaders let you take turns. But only now has it become so social that the social part of it is entertaining. And now there's an audience for the social dynamic and the skill. In the same way, you go to see sports because you want to see people perform, but this idea of real humans competing against each other in a social arena and knowing that they're real humans is incredibly interesting to people, going back to Roman gladiator days. Like that, there's nothing new about this. So now that we know that we've got people in this, multiplayer battle arenas, now there's fans for it. What I don't know, and I don't think we will know, I can't even prognosticate about this, are the young generation of fans going to graduate to real sports? Like all these kids that are watching esports, will they end up seeking the NFL? Or will this carry on through their life? Like, will there be 70, 80-year-olds in 50 years from now that are still watching esports? And I have no answer to that. I don't even know where to begin to project that, nor do I have really a guess.
Well, I know right now there's at least one 70-year-old that's actually watching it. So
I gotta
actually,
know. Who
no,
is
I
that?
don't. I don't.
well, he's a 70-year-old gamer, so it's
Right. I don't watch it though. I actually don't. What I do is when I watch, I'll watch Twitch every now and then for tips on how to play the games. So the other thing I've seen, which is fascinating about the video gaming industry, and again, kind of in the adoption of sports like sports like approaches, they do a lot of, I'll call it free training, right? They have, so for example, if I want to learn how to play, I'm picking a strategy game that hardly anyone knows, but it actually really sells well, from Paradox Paradox Interactive, is it? Called Stellaris. It's a big universe, set in the future, exploration. It's a what do they call it? It's a civilization building type game. But you can go on to Paradox Interactive's Twitch channel and watch the designers of the game talking about it, playing it, giving you ideas and hints. And plus, there's a number of, like all the other things, there's a number of reviewers who are following it, and they follow this stuff like they're following a team sport. They really are. I mean, even games like that, which are not as prone to multiplayer, say as Fortnite or something like that. They follow it like a team sport. I will watch that so I can understand something. Same way, Brent and I both watch videos to learn how to use some of the equipment we're using. And look, largely the very fact that we're live streaming is due to the fact that the esports has become such a big deal, right? Live streaming, it took off with that, right? Everywhere. And half the people I follow to understand how to use all this equipment in live streaming are gamers. They're actual gamers who are playing on Twitch, and they're doing esports and games. Either one.
I'm always so amazed at how much you can learn by watching other people's videos teaching you how to do things.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of off topic, but you just made me think. I started playing hockey only 10 years ago. I couldn't even skate before then. So I did this like adult learn to play program. Finally bit the bullet, said I've waited too long. I don't know what, I'm Canadian. I was supposed to be born on skates. And I got all the gear and I was getting ready for my first practice or whatever. I realized I didn't know how to put the gear on. So I had to search on YouTube, and some like 12-year-old in Connecticut was showing me how to put hockey gear on. And I thought, what a time to be alive. This is amazing.
Oh, I know. No, I totally, look, half the people, I have this one guy who's a live streamer. He's a gamer himself. But, those guys are not really esports people. They're more gamers who are broadcasting, right? And his name is Epos Vox, EPOSVOX. And he's a kid. He's snarky. He's not a kid. I mean, he's probably 29, 30. I mean, he's up there. But he's really good on explaining how to use stuff, and his reviews are great. And he picks apart stuff that most people don't really care about, but I do, right? It's the kind of stuff that, look, most of the people that we deal with in live streaming are really, they have cameras and they have equipment, usually a webcam. And arguably, if you say, well, what do you have, a camera or a webcam? They don't even know most of the time. They just have it, right? And they broadcast, but they don't think about the lighting particularly, other than you got to see someone clearly, or they don't think about the sound, or they don't think about things like, bit rate or audio routing, or, whatever, or, image stabilization and focus. I mean, photographers do, but not live streamers. And most of the people in our industry they get on, they stream because they got a webcam and a mic, and that's it, right? And they use Zoom, and that's the end of that. But when you get serious about it, which we are obviously, and I'm learning from kids who are less than half my age, really, and who are more often. There's some great ones who are not gamers, like Curtis Judd, who's lighting and sound, or
Photo Joseph guy.
Yeah, Photo Joseph. That guy's like amazing, and you can see how good he is by the quality of his actual production, which is spectacular, right? I mean, picture is crystal, and I mean, it's just perfect. The lighting is ideal. I mean, look, I'm sitting here like here, simple thing. I have a tiny little light, but I learned that, and it changes the background completely, right? So, so now I'm down a rabbit hole thinking about investing in a light that's going to cost me $1,700. That cost me $150, right? So, right. Well, that's what I'm saying. But the people who are teaching us,
is the blue supposed to make you look more approachable or something?
No, it's just it pops you out a little bit. That's all.
Yeah.
It basically pops you out a little bit.
But the other thing, if you don't have that, you got to get one of these.
That's right. The hypnotic fan.
People actually, this is not even a joke. If I'm doing one of these things and that fan isn't on, or if it's not in view, they get upset. It's like, where's the fan, man?
I know, it's true. Absolutely true.
Well, if you're talking about sports, there has to be fans.
And on that note, let me introduce. What do you have to say about that, Bill?
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get on Amazon, and we're gonna send a big sack of mothballs to Bill Belichick. What do you say? Just show up at his door on a skid, a big skid of mothballs.
Right. Yeah.
Let's all bring like bags of food and things, because the Patriots must not be paying them enough, man.
And a fresh bottle of whiskey.
That's right. I feel very bad. Poor man.
A fresh bar is so.
He had no clothes. I don't know.
A little Irish Spring will clean him up.
Yeah, Irish Spring and Irish whiskey.
I'm so glad that Steve, that you rolled with us on that whole thing, because quite honestly, I just saw that right before the show and I was like, I got to play this. And
oh my gosh, that is classic.
It was hysterical. So since we are kind of at closing time, one last thing is, people look, obviously what you have is really fascinating, and one of the things I like about it too is it's valuable on the face of it, right? Because one of the problems with a lot of technology is, unless you have a degree, an advanced degree, it's not that it's not valuable, but you don't understand it's valuable until you have an advanced degree and spend a year and a half trying to realize that. In your case, it's obvious from the get-go why it's valuable. I think we discussed it once. You and I talked about that other company, Zumpf, which is kind of like that too, right? The two of you who are both have some ties to the sports world are both like immediately obvious as to the value of what you have. Right. Okay, so how do people get a hold of you? Look, like one of the people, I don't know if he's still on, but one of the people on the show earlier was the VP of Business Analytics and Strategy for the New York Giants. So, he's an old friend of ours. He's been on the show a couple of times. No, that's a negative and never. Never. So, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, they can come to our website. There's a contact form there. They can email me directly as well. That could be probably the most direct way to get to me.
What's the email?
Well, it's my first initial last name, so SBOCSKA, which is a little tricky because that CS is a Hungarian standard, really? But not very common in English. So SBOCSKA at puginteractive.com.
Okay, so puginteractive.com, the site, or SBOCSKA at puginteractive.com.
That's right.
And how do you pronounce your last name?
How do I pronounce it? So I just say Boska to try to make it easy, but then people misspell it. The Hungarian pronunciation is Bochka, but no, I wouldn't expect anyone to get that right. And then I've heard,
you said that, I'll get it right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because we got to close the show, so we're going to take a shot at this right now. All so, right. On behalf of Steve Bochka, is that right?
Bochka.
9 out of 10. Yeah. 9 out of 10.
I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
And wait a minute. And on behalf of the coach, we are the CRm Playaz. enjoy your weekend. We will see you next week. We got a lot of stuff to talk about next week too.
Yes,
But
we do.
enjoy the weekend. This has been a fun one, except for we got to get some help to the coach there. But anyway, have a great rest. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.
Bye.